I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. Thank you so much. The radiator in my one-bedroom apartment clanked at night like it was complaining about its own age. I didn't blame it. At 59, my bones sometimes made similar protests when I climbed the 3 flights of stairs because the elevator had been temporarily out of service for the past 18 months. My name is Mary Evans, and this is the story of how I reclaimed my dignity at my son's wedding. The ceiling paint was peeling in the corner above my kitchenette, so small I could stretch my arms and almost touch both walls. Most nights, dinner was soup from a can or instant noodles. Whatever I could buy with the loose change, I counted carefully from my Social Security check. I wrote each expense in a small notebook with faded blue lines, because if I didn't, I would come up short before the end of the month. There had been days when I stood at the grocery counter, coins spread out before me, cheeks burning because I wasn't sure if I had enough for both bread and milk. I'd choose the bread and walk home thirsty. That's what my life became after Richard died. Heart attack at 58. Too young. Everyone said at the funeral. Too soon. But not soon enough to avoid the medical bills that drained our modest savings. I sold our house to pay them, keeping only what could fit in this apartment with its stubborn radiator and temperamental plumbing. In the corner of my living room sat the only thing of Richard's I couldn't part with, his old wooden chair. It was scratched on the arms where his wedding ring had caught the wood over decades, and the cushion had long since gone flat. But to me, it was sacred. When I sat there, I could still detect the faintest trace of his aftershave, as if the fabric remembered him better than photographs could. That chair was where I sat when the apartment felt too empty. It was where I talked to him when I couldn't sleep. It was where I kept myself from forgetting that once upon a time, I was part of a family, not just a woman scraping by. Sometimes when I closed my eyes in that chair, I saw Lucas as a boy. I remembered one winter night when he was 8 and burning with fever. His small body shook as he called out for me in the dark. "Mom!" His voice had been paper thin, frightened. I'd pressed a cool cloth against his forehead hour after hour, whispering over and over, "Mom's here. I won't leave you." His tiny hand had clung to mine with all the strength he had. "Promise. I promise," I'd whispered back, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. That memory stays sharp because of what happened at his wedding, because the same boy who once begged me not to leave him let me walk out in silence while his bride told me to sit by the kitchen door. The contrast is a knife I still feel twisting. The bodega down the street was my regular stop for essentials. Mr. Patel behind the counter knew me by name and sometimes slipped an extra apple or orange into my bag. "For calcium," he'd say with a wink, though I suspect he knew those small kindnesses helped stretch my budget. That Tuesday was no different than any other. I was counting out 5 crumpled dollar bills for bread, eggs, and a small carton of milk when I noticed the sign above the register, "Powerball Jackpot, $62 million. Why not waste $5 the way Mia wastes thousands? I thought bitterly. Just that morning, I'd had breakfast with Lucas and Mia at a cafe where I'd ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, plain toast and coffee, while Mia had casually mentioned her newest designer handbag. She'd pulled it out to show Lucas, who had whistled appreciatively at what I later learned was a $3,800 purchase. Meanwhile, I was debating whether I could afford both coffee and toast. "Add a Powerball ticket," I said to Mr. Patel, surprising myself. He raised his eyebrows but printed the ticket without comment. I stuffed it into my wallet alongside my dwindling cash and promptly forgot about it for 2 days. Wednesday passed in a blur of wedding preparations. Lucas and Mia had asked me to address some of the invitation envelopes because Mia said my old-fashioned handwriting would add a nice touch. I spent 6 hours writing names and addresses until my fingers cramped, then delivered them to Mia's apartment where she barely looked up from her phone to thank me. Thursday evening, I was nursing a cup of lukewarm tea and flipping through an old magazine when the TV news caught my attention. The lottery drawing. I remembered the ticket and fished it from my wallet more out of curiosity than expectation. The announcer's voice droned as the numbers appeared. 7. I had that. 14. I had that too. 21. My breath caught. 35. My hand began to tremble. 47. Impossible. Powerball 9. My teacup clattered against the saucer. Every single number matched. My hands shook so hard I nearly spilled my tea. I checked again, then again, then again. There was no mistake. In that moment, the woman who counted out coins for milk had become a multimillionaire. But the first thing I felt was not joy. It was fear. Fear that Lucas and Mia would find out. Fear that they would see me not as a mother, but as a bank account. Fear that I would lose the last scraps of dignity I was holding on to. I sat in Richard's chair until dawn, the ticket clutched in my hand, trying to decide what to do. Richard would know. He always knew the right path. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine what he would say. "Paper is power, Mary." I could almost hear him say. It was one of his favorite phrases from his years working at the bank. "Make sure it protects you." By morning, I knew what I needed to do. I would claim the money, but I would do it quietly. I would not tell Lucas or Mia, not yet. First, I needed protection. The law office of Rodriguez and Associates was in a modest building downtown. I'd chosen it precisely because it wasn't flashy. Alejandro Rodriguez had tired eyes and a calm voice. He spread the papers across his desk and looked at me over his glasses. "Mrs. Evans," he said, "paper is power." The echo of Richard's words made my spine straighten. If you want to protect yourself, do it with documents. Do not tell anyone until you're ready. Decide carefully who deserves to know and who deserves to benefit. Money this large can break families apart. I nodded. I already knew he was right. My life had been a series of sacrifices no one remembered. Selling Richard's watch a gift from his father so Lucas could start graduate school. Skipping meals so there was enough to pay for Lucas's books. Years of telling myself that love and loyalty would be repaid in time. But at that wedding, I would learn they would not. Still, in that office with Rodriguez, I made a choice. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I gave Lucas and Mia the gift of a penthouse and a check, they would see me again. Not as an old woman to be hidden by the kitchen door, but as the mother who had given everything. I left his office with folders of signed documents tucked in my purse, the ink still drying. I told myself this was my chance to mend the cracks, to heal the distance between us. I imagined Lucas's eyes when he opened the white box, Mia's gasp when she saw the deed. I believed gratitude could grow where selfishness had lived. That was the hope I carried into their wedding day. The hope I carried in that silver-tied box pressed against my chest. I remember the day I first stepped into the penthouse. The elevator doors opened to a private foyer, and the agent guided me through glass doors that revealed a view of the Atlantic stretched endlessly toward the horizon. I walked out onto the balcony, and the wind hit me with the salty smell of the ocean. My hair blew across my face, and I gripped the railing, almost dizzy with the thought that this place could be mine. The floor beneath my feet was smooth stone, the kind I had only seen in magazines. The water shimmered below like it was waiting to carry me away from everything I had endured. I closed my eyes and imagined Lucas standing there, keys in his hand, laughing like he did as a boy when he opened presents on Christmas morning. I saw Mia's mouth fall open in astonishment, maybe even gratitude softening her carefully painted smile. For one fragile moment, I convinced myself that a deed worth over $3 million could buy me back the respect I had lost. I wanted to give them a future so beautiful it would remind them of the mother who had fought for theirs. Later that evening, I sat at my kitchen table with the paperwork spread out before me. I signed my name with a trembling hand, then slid the property deed into an envelope. At the bank, I instructed the manager to issue a cashier's check for $4 million. He looked at me like he wasn't sure I understood the number. "Are you certain, Mrs. Evans?" he asked. I told him I was absolutely certain. When the check was ready, I placed it carefully inside a velvet sleeve. Both the deed and the check went into a white gift box tied with a silver ribbon I bought from the craft store. I pressed the lid down almost reverently, as if sealing in not just money but a prayer. That box sat on my counter for 2 weeks. Every morning when I boiled water for tea, my eyes landed on it. It reminded me of the hope I was still carrying, that one day soon, gratitude would return to me in the form of my son's voice. During those same weeks, I starved myself in small, hidden ways so that the wedding could shine. I wrote checks for flowers, for catering, for the photographer. I gave up meat and fruit, telling myself soup was enough. I skipped bus fare and walked across town to save a few dollars. Each payment was a sacrifice I justified with the image of Lucas's face lighting up when he discovered my gift. Meanwhile, Mia was busy showing off her newest handbags at brunch. I saw the pictures on social media. She posed in mirrored sunglasses, her hand resting casually on a purse that cost more than 3 months of my rent. Her caption read, "Hard work pays off." Though I never saw her work a day as hard as I had. At the very same moment, she was flaunting her luxury. I was at home counting coins to see if I could afford eggs. Still, I kept going. I ordered a modest dress for myself. Nothing like the gowns Mia wore, but one I could at least feel presentable in. I rehearsed the moment when they would open my box in front of everyone. I imagined the silence falling as the deed unfolded, the gasp rising in the crowd, Lucas embracing me in front of the family. It was a dream stitched together from every penny I spent, every meal I skipped, every corner I cut to make their wedding shine brighter than my own life ever had. And even as doubt whispered in the quiet hours of the night, I held on. I sat in Richard's old chair, looking at that silver ribbon glinting in the dim light, and told myself this was the bridge back to my son. This was the gift that would make him see me not as an old woman living on Social Security, but as the mother who had always been there. I convinced myself that this one act, this one extravagant gesture, would heal everything. I woke before dawn on the wedding day. The city still quiet. The air outside my window the pale blue of a new beginning. I ironed my navy dress with careful strokes, pressed the seams the way Richard taught me when we were young and saving every dollar. I pinned my hair back, simple and neat. My hands shook once, then steadied. I slipped my feet into low heels and set the white gift box on my lap. The silver ribbon gleamed. The church was filled long before the procession. Stained glass threw squares of color over the aisle. The organ swelled. The air smelled faintly of lilies and polished wood. Friends and colleagues, cousins and neighbors. Faces that had watched Lucas grow from a boy with scraped knees into a man in a tuxedo. I sat near the middle and smoothed the skirt over my knees. When the doors opened and he walked in with the minister, his shoulders straight and his eyes shining, my vision blurred. He looked like Richard in the photograph I keep on the dresser. The same hopeful set of the mouth, the same way of glancing down as if catching emotion before it spills. I thought of the night Richard died, the sterile hospital room, the way I held his hand as the monitors clicked. I remembered signing papers alone, planning a funeral, promising myself that Lucas would still have the life we had dreamed for him. Every sacrifice threaded through that aisle like invisible ribbon. The watch I sold so he could start graduate school, the second job I took, the holidays I worked while other families gathered. When Mia entered on her father's arm, the congregation hummed with admiration. Her dress flared. Her makeup was flawless. Her smile belonged on a billboard. Lucas's face opened with awe and something like triumph. I clapped when everyone clapped. I repeated the prayers. The vows were simple, and the kiss drew cheers. Even then, I believed there might be room for me. I believed kindness could still fit beside their ambitions. The reception hall was all crystal and gold. A trio played jazz in the corner, and waiters moved like choreography. Trays balanced on palms. I found table 12 toward the back, near an exit and a row of potted palms. Around me sat Aunt Lorraine with her cane and sly humor, Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker from our old neighborhood, 2 elderly cousins I had not seen in years. Diana Collins, Lucas's godmother and my oldest friend, sat beside me, elegant in her gray suit, her silver hair twisted into a knot. She squeezed my hand when I sat down. We traded small stories, and the conversation felt gentle. I could see the head table across the dance floor. Lucas leaned close to his best man, laughing. Mia glittered beneath the lights, receiving attention as if she had always owned it. I placed the white box beside my plate where I could keep a hand on it without thinking. Dinner arrived. Beautifully plated. I ate slowly, tasting more nerves than food. After the toasts, after the first dance, after a swirl of relatives posing for photos. Mia began moving from table to table, accepting compliments. She reached ours at last, up close. Her beauty was almost fierce. She touched my shoulder lightly, smiling a perfect smile. "Mary," she said, her voice honeyed, "for the next round of photos, would you mind sitting by the kitchen door? The lighting is much better there." Her tone was gentle. Her eyes were not. I stared at her hand on my shoulder, small and manicured, and felt a familiar coldness crawl up my spine. For a heartbeat, the room kept moving. The trio kept playing. The glasses kept chiming. Then the sound thinned. A fork paused. A whisper skittered across linen. Diana went still, outrage flashing across her face. She drew breath to object. I met her gaze and shook my head once. "Not here. Not today." I turned to Mia and smiled the way you do when you are finished explaining who you are. "The lighting by the kitchen door," I repeated slowly. "Yes?" she said, her smile unchanging. "The photographer thinks it would be better for the composition. Some of the older guests will be seated there." I rose from my chair. My palms felt the cool weight of the box as I lifted it from the table. I tucked it against my ribs, the way I once tucked Lucas when he was new to the world. I walked past the centerpieces of white roses, past the polished dance floor, past the head table where my son adjusted his cufflink and laughed at a story. He did not look up. He did not see me. A waiter near the entrance reached for the door. I nodded thanks and stepped into the corridor, the carpet swallowing the last of the band. I could smell coffee and something sweet from the kitchen. Life went on with its calm efficiency. Outside, the evening air was cool. I stood on the curb until a taxi pulled over. The driver glanced at me in the mirror and at the box in my lap. "Are you okay, ma'am?" he asked. "I am better than I have been in years," I said. As the car merged into traffic, the lights of the venue receded. I rested my cheek briefly against the box and felt something settle into place. Not anger, not bitterness. Resolve. By the time we reached my building, I understood what had changed. I had stepped out of a role I had worn for decades. I had left the table where I was expected to sit and be grateful for crumbs. This was my act break. The moment the accommodating mother ended and the woman with boundaries began. The phone rang at 2 a.m, the hour that peels sleep from the eyes. I woke in Richard's old chair with a blanket around my shoulders and the white gift box on the coffee table, its silver ribbon catching the light from the street. Lucas's name filled the screen. I let it ring twice, felt that old reflex to rescue, then answered. "Mom?" His voice was careful, like he was stepping around a spill. "Mia says you were upset. Are you okay?" I looked at the box. I could almost see the outline of the deed and the velvet sleeve inside. In the black glass of the phone, my face floated back at me, lined and steady. "I am exactly where I need to be." I said. There was a breath, a small click, the sound of a television far away. "Mom, what happened?" Did someone say something? I glanced at the empty chair across from me. I pictured the kitchen door, the sparkle of chandeliers on polished floors, Mia's hand on my shoulder as if moving a vase, a lifetime of explaining rose in my throat. I swallowed it. "Good night, Lucas," I said, and I ended the call. The apartment listened. A pipe ticked. I pulled the blanket close and let quiet cover me like warm water. The phone lit again. Lucas, then unknown, then Mia. I turned the ringer off and set the phone face down. The glow faded. The ribbon kept its sheen. I filled the kettle and waited for the thin whistle. Mug, teabag, kettle, pour. Steam rose like a benediction. The phone vibrated against the wood again and again. I did not pick it up. When Lucas was small, he called for me in the dark, and I answered before the second cry. Now the roles had turned. The phone called, and I let it ring. Not to punish, but to draw a line. Boundaries are not knives. They are doors with locks. Tonight, I turned the deadbolt. At 3, the calls stopped. Minutes later, they began again. A text blinked, then another. "Are you safe? Please respond. Mia is worried. I set the phone down and breathed. Safe is not the same as comfortable. I was truly safe. The tea cooled. I smoothed the ribbon with my finger. I had tied it gently, imagining it sliding free under my son's hands. I had pictured his eyes when he saw the deed. Mia's face opening toward gratitude. In that picture, I had erased myself. Tonight, I wrote myself back in. A gift can bless, but not at the price of the giver. At 4, I lay on the couch and watched the window shadows climb the ceiling. I did not sleep. I did not need to. The silence kept watch. I considered drafting a message that would explain. I considered making it easy for him to understand. Then I remembered the ballroom where my silence had been imposed. This quiet was chosen. Choice alters the taste. Dawn thinned the dark. I brewed another cup and opened the little notebook where I tracked the budget. I wrote a new line between rent and groceries, respect due upon receipt. The phone hummed again. I let it hum. At 6, Diana called. Her name on the screen eased something in my chest. I answered. Are you all right, Mary? She said. More than all right, I told her. I am learning. She let out a breath that sounded like pride. Then let them wait, she said. Little old friendship speaks in quiet. I showered and dressed in a plain sweater and sturdy shoes. I set the white box on the shelf and tucked the spare key to the penthouse into the lining of my purse just to feel its shape and remember my life now held more than one room. I plugged the phone in, turned it on, and walked away. By noon, messages lay in a stack. Some were soft with apology. Some were bright as if nothing had happened. A few had edges. I closed the screen and stood at the sink under cold water. I looked at Richard's chair, at the worn places where our hands had polished the wood. Power is not volume. It is posture. Tonight I changed mine. This was the night my silence learned to speak for me. The phone became a metronome, and my heart kept steadier time. I understood at last that I did not owe immediate answers to people who treated me like a pause in their plans. I owed myself kindness and steadiness. I turned the ringer off and let the room settle like a lake without wind. The ribbon on the box caught noon light and drew a bright line across the lid. Diana knocked just after 9 with a paper bag tucked in her elbow and the smell of warm cornbread moving down my hallway. I opened the door. Heat from the loaf rolled over my face. Her eyes flicked to the white gift box on the coffee table. Silver ribbon bright as a blade. She said nothing yet. Diana always lets the person with the bruise speak first. Come in, I said, and he said, that the good batch extra butter, less sugar. She set the bag on the counter and surveyed the room the way nurses do, noticing everything without fuss. You look steady. I am trying to be. We sat at the small table. I set out plates and a jar of honey. The chair across from me complained, then settled. She broke the loaf with her hands. Steam rose. We ate without talking. She nodded toward Richard's chair. You sleep there. I did. And the phone, it rang until it learned I was not coming. Diana sipped coffee. Tell me. I told her about the ballroom, the light, the request to sit by the kitchen door like a misplaced vase. I told her I stood up, took the box, and walked out. Diana listened like a bridge holds weight. When I finished, she traced a crack in the varnish. Mary, you have paid the toll for years. You pawned Richard's watch to cover Lucas's first semester. I went with you. I held your hand while the clerk examined the engraving with a loupe, like love was an imperfection. You worked holidays. You gave rides. You wrote checks you could not afford and smiled so he would not see the cost. I stared at the white box. I told myself the gift would heal it. She met my eyes. Mary, you have given enough. Let them pay their own price. She said it softly, not as punishment, but as release. The words loosened a tightness behind my ribs. I folded a napkin. If I keep the deed, does that make me hard? It makes you honest. Kindness without a boundary is not love. It is erasure. She leaned back. You taught Lucas to read by tracing words on his palm. Trace a new word now. No, I laughed once, surprised. You make it sound easy. It is not easy. It is adult. She tore another piece of bread and slid the plate toward me. Eat. Strength helps the spine hold. We ate for a while. Diana moved to practicalities. The trust is set. Rodriguez filed everything. Title is clean. The deed sits in the trust until I decide otherwise. Good paper before promises. She nodded toward the phone. You going to call him back? Not today. If he apologizes, I will listen. To the apology meant for me, not the money. Diana smiled. She reached into her bag and drew out a creased photograph from her wallet. Lucas at 8 with a missing tooth. His arm thrown around my waist under a library banner. I kept this because of your face, she said. Tired and fierce at once. The same look you have today. I touched the glossy edge. That winter, he begged me not to leave when he had the fever, and I stayed. And you stayed. She pinned the photo under the salt shaker so it would not curl. Now it is his turn to stand where you can see him. If he steps up, you will know. If he does not, that is also an answer. The kettle clicked off. I poured more coffee. Diana gathered her things but did not rise. I am proud of you. I feel like I am breaking something. You are breaking a pattern. Patterns crack before they heal. We walked to the door. She pressed the bag with the remaining cornbread into my hands. For later, at the threshold, she paused the way she does when she wants a line to land. Remember the shop with the watch you cried in the bus shelter and did not want Lucas to know? You said love was supposed to be quiet. She met my eyes. Hear me. Quiet can also mean strong. I nodded. The hallway held its breath like it understood the change arriving today. Diana squeezed my arm. Eat. Rest. If the phone rings, let it. Your silence is speaking. After she left, I stood for a moment with the door open, then closed it gently and slid the chain. The apartment felt less small somehow. I set the cornbread on the counter, placed the photo beside the box, and sat in Richard's chair. The ribbon caught a line of light. My resolve thickened like cooling honey. I did not owe an explanation today. I owed myself breakfast and the courage to keep the lock turned until respect knocked. Alejandro Rodriguez was the one who said it plainly. If I wanted clarity instead of rumors, I should hire a private investigator. Facts are a kind of light. He told me paper and proof keep panic from running the room. I sat across from him with the trust folder between us and felt the fatigue of guessing. He slid a card across the desk. Rebecca Chen, licensed and discreet. I put the card in my wallet and walked home through a city that suddenly felt full of doors. Rebecca Chen chose a coffee shop 2 blocks from the courthouse. She was small, quick-eyed, and unadorned, the kind of person you forget seeing, which I assumed was her professional gift. She wore a charcoal blazer over a plain white shirt. No jewelry except a simple wedding band. I arrived 5 minutes early and found her already seated in a corner booth, a manila folder and untouched coffee before her. She stood when she saw me, her handshake firm and brief. Mrs. Evans, she said, gesturing for me to sit. Thank you for being punctual. I settled across from her, placing my purse carefully on the seat beside me. You come recommended by Mr. Rodriguez, she nodded once. Alejandro and I have worked together for 12 years. He says you need information before making decisions. Yes, I said, wrapping my hands around the ceramic mug the waitress placed before me. About my son and his new wife. Rebecca opened a small notebook and uncapped a pen. Tell me the situation. I explained about the lottery win, the penthouse, the wedding, and the kitchen door. I described the midnight calls and Mia's sweet, sharp voice. Rebecca took notes like a court reporter, no drama, just dates and names. Her face revealed nothing as I spoke. What do you want to know? She asked when I finished. Enough to make a clean decision. I said their debts, their plans, the truth, whether I should ever hand them the box I brought home. She nodded, closed her notebook, and said she would be in touch within the week. I'll be thorough but discreet. They won't know I'm looking. I believed her. There was something reassuring in her efficiency, a woman who knew exactly what her work required. A week later, she called. The report was ready. Her office was spare, a metal fan humming, file boxes along one wall, a desk with nothing but a laptop and a framed photo turned away from visitors. She set a binder on the table and opened to a neat index. "Highlights first," she said, and I braced my hands on the chair as if a wave were coming. Credit cards balances near the limit on 3 accounts. Late fees, interest rates that made my stomach clench. Student loans, Lucas's principal barely moving. Income-based payments keeping default at bay while chaining the future. Auto loan Mia traded up to a luxury SUV 6 months ago. Payments high enough to cover a year of groceries. Buy now, pay later accounts clothing, home goods, electronics. 6 open lines, all active. A honeymoon package booked on credit. A store card tied to handbags with minimums that never touched the principal. She slid photos across the table, Mia in a boutique holding a purse like a trophy. Date stamp visible. The bag's price listed on the store's public site. Lucas outside a financial planner's office. The window signage promised retirement strategy. They asked about timelines of inheritance. Rebecca said the receptionist did not disclose details. She only confirmed the subject when I posed as a prospective client. I felt heat rise, then drain. "There's more," she said. They also inquired about establishing power of attorney for an elderly parent. The planner referred them to an attorney. My fingers went cold against the wood grain of the table. They hired someone too. She pushed a second business card toward me. "Jake Morrison, licensed, small shop. He's been asking around your building. He followed you to Rodriguez's office and to a title company where you signed packets. He couldn't access sealed records, but he photographed you leaving with a branded envelope." She rotated a photo toward me, my face, tired and set, held the envelope like a lifeline. "He also staked out your bank 2 mornings. No breach, only observation. He's looking for a story he can sell to them." Rebecca tapped a page with highlighted posts, public social media. Mia writing about leveling up and family backing. Lucas replying with a key emoji and a muscle arm. "None of it illegal," she said. "All of it revealing." I turned back to the debt totals. The numbers marched like soldiers who never sleep. Rebecca let the fan hum fill the space. "You're not their plan," she said gently. "You're their bailout." The sentence landed with the steady weight of a verdict. I thought of Richard's chair, the winter fever, Lucas's small hand clinging to mine. I thought of the white box on my shelf with its silver ribbon. Patience tied into a bow. I had wanted gratitude to bloom when they saw what I prepared. Now I saw a different garden, one where needs swallowed whatever touched it, where gifts were not bridges, but bait. Rebecca closed the binder. "You hired me for the truth," she said. "I'm sorry it hurts." I nodded. "What do I owe you?" She named a number I could easily afford now, and for a heartbeat. I felt shame at how easy it was. I paid. She gave me a receipt. We shook hands. Outside, the afternoon was bright and ordinary. I carried the binder in a plain tote and blended into the sidewalk. At my building, I climbed the stairs slowly and let myself in. The apartment smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old books. I set the binder beside the white box and stood between them for a long time. The phone lit with a new message. Lucas, a cheerful line about a brunch photo he had posted, a link, a heart. Not a word about the wedding, not a word about me. I powered the phone off and placed it face down. I ran my hand over the lid of the box. "I see you," I told myself. "I see what they see." It was the first time the sentence did not feel like betrayal. It felt like waking. Paper had given me power. Proof had given me permission. I poured tea and sat in Richard's chair. The ribbon flashed in a bar of late light, a bright, thin boundary that finally held. The call came mid-morning while a square of sun warmed the rug, and the white box sat on the shelf like a small moon. Mia's name filled the screen. I let it ring to the last possible second, then answered. Her voice arrived sugared and bright, the kind of sweetness that coats a blade. "Mary, hi, I was worried. Yesterday was so hectic. I think there was a misunderstanding. The photographer was rushing us, and the lighting by the entrance was terrible. When I said kitchen door, I meant closer to the kitchen corridor for composition. You know I'm so sorry if that came out wrong. She did not stop for breath. Apology by weather report. Blame assigned to light and logistics. We would love to see you at the gift opening today. Noon works for everyone. Can you make it? My eyes went to Richard's chair, then to the ribbon glinting on the box. I heard Rebecca's dry voice in my head. You're not their plan. You're their bailout. I held the phone away for a heartbeat and let silence settle between us. Silence has a shape when you allow it. On the other end, she rushed to fill it. I know you must have been tired. Weddings are a lot for anyone. I totally get that. Lucas was so worried when you left. He said you didn't even have cake. He hates when people leave without cake. A small, humorless laugh escaped me. Anyway, everyone's coming over at noon. Lucas's boss might stop by. It would mean so much to have you there. Bring your box. We can put all the gifts by the fireplace for a cute picture. I let 3 more seconds pass. I counted them in my head the way I used to count Lucas's breaths when he slept with a fever, my palm on his hair, waiting for the next rise. No, I said, There was a small click in the line. Not mechanical. Human. I pictured her perfect mouth closing in surprise. I'm sorry, what? No, I repeated gently, setting down a cup. Is this because of yesterday, Mary? I said I'm sorry. I was just trying to organize the flow. The kitchen corridor was closer to the photographer. It wasn't about age. Goodness, no, you're beautiful. Everyone said so. Please don't take it personally. Apology cushioned with a compliment that wasn't one. I thought of the binder in my tote, of balances and minimum payments and handbags glowing under boutique lights. I pictured Lucas outside a planner's glass door, the key emoji in his public reply. Mia shifted tactics. If noon is hard, we can do 2, or we can swing by and pick up your gift so you don't have to carry anything heavy. We can have our driver stop at your building. Whatever is easiest for you. I want this to feel easy. I looked at the box. It did not look heavy, but it held the weight of my years. Today won't work, I said. Tomorrow then, we can do brunch. Actually, the registry says there are still some kitchen items open. I know you picked something already, but if you wanted to exchange your gift or add a little card with details, that would be totally fine. People do that all the time. Exchange. Add details. I had learned the language of fishing. I pictured handing a trout my own net. No, I said again, and I ended the call. I set the phone face down. The apartment breathed. After a minute, it buzzed once, then again, then in a pattern that sounded like pleading made digital. I left it on the table and cut a square of Diana's cornbread, spread it with honey, and stood at the sink, outside. A bus sighed. Somewhere a door shut with a soft thud. Everyday sounds sized exactly for sanity. When I checked the screen, the messages stacked in alternating fonts. From Mia, so worried. Please confirm you are safe. From Lucas, love you. Call when you can. From an unknown number. Hi, sweetie. This is Mia's mom. We are concerned. Family needs to stick together. From Mia again. Posting a pic from the reception family is everything. Hope you love it. A heart, a key, a camera icon. I opened her post. 3 photos slid by. Mia laughing with bridesmaids. Lucas cutting the cake. A group shot by the entrance where a gap yawned exactly where a mother might stand. The caption read, like a performance. I closed the app and washed my hands as if I could scrub it off. The phone rang once more. I answered because I wanted the choice to be mine. Mia's voice had cooled by a degree. I just need to know what to tell people. You left. It looked bad. Lucas's boss asked why his mother disappeared before speeches. Can you at least say you felt faint, a migraine? Something graceful. I'm trying to manage optics. Optics. The word settled in my stomach like a stone. You can tell the truth. I said, what truth would that be? That you asked me to sit by the kitchen door. She made a sound like a laugh cut short. No one will believe that. Why would I say that? It makes me sound cruel. It does. Her voice thinned. Mary, this is getting dramatic. I'm trying to do the right thing here. I'm trying to include you. You're trying to retrieve what you think I have, I said, and surprised myself with how calm it sounded. She inhaled sharply. What is that supposed to mean? Goodbye, Mia. I set the phone down and let it ring to voicemail. Messages came in with new angles, offers to send a car, questions about my address, about the building's access, about whether the concierge would accept deliveries. Triangulation arrived next. Diana texted to say Mia had reached out, worried, asking if I was ill. I told Diana I was fine and asked her to save her breath for the people who could hear it. Afternoon softened toward evening. I brewed tea and moved Richard's chair to catch the light. I considered what a real apology sounds like. It names the harm. It does not explain it away. It asks nothing in return. What I had heard was not apology. It was a keyhole search for access. Near sunset, Lucas texted a photo of us from years ago at a school fair. His face paint smeared. My hair windblown. Remember this. Wish you had stayed last night. Mia says you misunderstood. Can we reset? I typed and erased 3 replies, then set the phone down without sending any. Not to punish. To keep the line clean until a real conversation was possible. By nightfall, the buzzing slowed. I placed the phone in a drawer and closed it gently. The white box held steady on the shelf, its ribbon a thin horizon of silver. I sat, lifted my mug, and felt the quiet return to size the room around me. My number had been small. It had also been complete. The storm arrived by phone, not sky. I was rinsing a cup when the ringtone clawed across the counter. Mia's name flashed. Then the sound of crying hit my ear the moment I answered. Words tumbled so fast they tangled. Mary, thank God you picked up. Lucas collapsed at the office. They took him by ambulance. He's at Springfield General. Please come now. For a second, the old reflex fired, the one that sends a mother running before thought can form. I gripped the edge of the sink until my hands steadied. Which entrance? I asked. Emergency or main? Emergency. She sobbed. They're doing tests. It looks bad. He asked for you. Please. I felt the weight of Richard's chair behind me like a hand between my shoulder blades, pressing me back to center. I'm going to call the hospital. I said, I'll see what they need. Just come, she pleaded. There's no time to explain. There's time to ask for a name, I said, and ended the call. I dried my hands and opened my little notebook to the page where I keep important numbers. The hospital switchboard answered on the 3rd ring, a calm woman with a headset voice. Springfield General, how may I direct your call? I'm looking for a patient. I said, Lucas Evans. Admitted to the emergency department a few minutes ago. Let me check. Keys tapped softly. One moment? The moment stretched. I watched sunlight slide across the silver ribbon on the white box. It glowed the way a horizon line does when you decide to keep walking. I'm not seeing a Lucas Evans, she said. He may be in triage without registration. Do you have a date of birth? I gave her the date. More tapping. Nothing under that name or date of birth, she said. I can check incoming transfers. One moment. My thumb left a damp print on the counter. I stared at the place where it evaporated. A siren sounded somewhere far away. It did not turn toward me. No current transfers for that name, she said. If he arrives, the system will update. Thank you, I said. Would anyone know if a patient came in as unidentified? We wouldn't share that information, she said, professional and kind. But if you call back in 30 minutes, I can check again. I appreciate your help, I said, and ended the call. The kettle clicked on without my remembering to push the switch. I turned it off and stood very still. The phone jumped again in my hand. Mia. I answered and let silence arrive first. Where are you? She said. Are you in a cab? The doctor needs family consent. I called the hospital. I said. They have no record of Lucas. He must have been transferred, she said quickly. They probably took him to county. Or maybe he left against medical advice. He does that sometimes. He hates doctors. Ambulances do not take patients to one hospital and then send them to another without paperwork. I said. My voice sounded like a room with the windows open. Which unit is he in? She swallowed, and I heard the small sound of a lie learning to walk. Maybe it was Mercy, she said. I was so upset. I got the names mixed up. I'm at the car now. I can pick you up. Text me your exact address so I can send it to the driver. I do not give my address to people who cannot name a hospital. I said. Her tone shifted. The sobbing fell away. The request sharpened. Mary, this is serious. Lucas needs you. Can you please cooperate for once? We don't have time for your suspicion. Asking questions is not suspicion. I said, it's love with its eyes open. Fine, she snapped, then softened the word with a breath. I will call you back when I get clarity. Just be ready to go. Keep your phone on. I placed my phone on the table and looked at it like it was a small, loud animal. Then I pressed the side button until the screen went dark. The room exhaled. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled. A door across the hall closed. Life kept its shape. I poured water into the kettle and clicked it on for real. While it heated, I thought about emergency rooms. I know their sounds. I know the beep of monitors and the rubber soles squeaking and the scent of hand sanitizer so strong it erases everything else. I sat in those sounds the night Richard died. I held his hand while the nurses moved with brisk mercy. That was crisis. It did not need a caption. It did not ask for an address before it told the truth. The kettle whistled. I poured, watched the tea spin in the cup, breathed the steam like it was medicine. The phone stayed dark. I set the cup on a saucer and carried it to Richard's chair. The cushion received me with its familiar sigh. Across from me, the white box rested on the shelf. The ribbon cut a clean line against the cardboard. Lines matter. They are how a map becomes a path. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I pictured Mia pacing, inventing new versions, looking for the angle that would open what she wanted. I pictured Lucas at his desk, alive and well, oblivious to the story told in his name. My heart ached for the boy he had been. My mind held the man he had become. 2 truths in one chest. That is what mothering grows into if you live long enough. The phone chimed once as it booted back to life. Messages tumbled in. From Mia, update coming. Stay by your phone. Do not turn it off. From an unknown number, this is Jake with a private ambulance service. We might need a family signature by proxy. Send your address. From Lucas at last. Everything okay? Mia said you are on your way. I stared at that line until the words lost shape. Then I typed one reply. Are you at work? He answered within a minute. Yes. Where else would I be? I set the phone down like it was hot. I felt something unclench low in my spine. I turned the phone off again. Slower this time. Not out of anger, but hygiene. Noise is a kind of dirt. It sticks to your thinking if you let it. I carried my cup to the window and stood between the light and the chair. Below, the street moved with a weekday certainty. A woman pushed a stroller. A man in a blue jacket lifted his coffee to his lips without looking up. The ordinary persisted. I let it. When the phone rang again, I did not answer. It rang 4 times, then 5, then stopped. A voicemail icon appeared and waited. I did not press play. I did not need to hear the next version. I already knew the genre. False alarm is fishing line. Concern is key. Urgency is mask. I sat back down and pulled my notebook close. On a fresh page, I wrote a small ledger. Under the word emergencies, I drew 2 columns, real, manufactured. Under real, I wrote Richard's last night, Lucas's fever at 8 years old, the time the landlord's pipe burst. Under manufactured, I wrote kitchen door, midnight calls, hospital story. Then I closed the notebook and felt the balance settle. I did not call Mia back. I did not run to a place that did not exist. I did not spill the contents of my life to someone who will not say the name of a building without trying on another. I placed my cup on its saucer and let the quiet hold. My silence did not slam a door. It locked one. Boundaries do not shout. They click. Moving day began with the hush that comes before a storm. Only the storm was order and boxes and men in canvas gloves. The lobby smelled like lemon oil and new carpet. The concierge greeted me by name. He had practiced it, careful and warm. He slid a leather guest book toward the movers and handed me a small packet with building rules, a key fob, and a card that said, "Welcome home" in restrained type. I held the card a second longer than needed. Home is a word that can bruise. It can also mend. The freight elevator opened like a stage curtain. The movers wheeled in my small life. 2 suitcases, a crate of dishes, a box of books wrapped in brown paper, a lamp with a shade slightly dented from years of closets. The only piece of furniture I insisted they carry with both hands was Richard's old wooden chair. The foreman, a man with kind eyes and a tattoo of an anchor, asked if it was delicate. "It's important," I said. He nodded as if those were the same. We rode up. The elevator gave a soft bell. The doors parted to the private foyer and the double glass doors of the penthouse. I unlocked them, and the ocean stepped in without moving. The light off the water found every surface and washed it clean. I stood for a moment, bare feet braced on cool stone, and felt the room greet me. Then the work began. They set boxes in the kitchen and stacked the books by the wall. The chair I asked them to place by the largest window, the one that looked east. It sat there like an altar. The anchor tattoo man watched my face when they put it down. He smiled when he saw my shoulders lower by an inch. "Good spot," he said. "Feels right." I tipped them well and thanked them for treating an old chair like a person. When the door closed behind them, silence spread its linen over everything. I moved slowly, not wanting to disturb the moment. I ran my palm over the stone counter, cool and smooth as riverbed. I opened the refrigerator, empty and humming, a clean slate. I checked the stove, the water pressure, the stackable washer that gleamed like a promise. I opened cabinets and found them freshly lined. In the hall closet, I placed the white gift box on the top shelf beside spare towels. I did not need to hide it. I needed to put it where it would watch without ruling. From the balcony, the wind brought the smell of salt and sun-warmed metal. Below, gulls wrote messy lines across the air. A tugboat worked past with a low horn that made the glass shiver. The ocean is honest. It tells you what is coming. And then it comes. I leaned against the rail and let the light anchor me. Inside, I made the bed with crisp sheets that still held the faint scent of the store. New sheets, new pillowcases, a new duvet folded into thirds like a hotel. In the bathroom, I lined 3 simple items on the vanity: toothbrush, comb, small jar of face cream. I cleared the counters of every extra thing. Clarity is my new luxury. I called the utility company and confirmed what Rodriguez had arranged. He had a way of arranging things so they felt inevitable. I set up a delivery for a small grocery order: eggs, milk, tea, bread, butter, oranges, a bouquet of cheap daisies for the kitchen table because I could. I told the concierge not to admit visitors without calling first and not to accept packages from names I did not recognize. He wrote it down on a pad with real paper and a pen, not a screen. That too felt like respect. In the late afternoon, I unwrapped the books and stacked them along the wall in neat rows. Richard's chair watched me work. I picked one of his favorites, a dog-eared novel with a bookstore stamp from a city we once visited and could barely afford. I placed it on the sill by the chair so its spine faced the water. It felt like inviting him to see the view. When the groceries came, the delivery boy whistled under his breath at the windows. I tipped him more than I had budgeted, and he left grinning, the kind of grin that makes you love the future. I cracked 2 eggs into a pan and watched them bloom in butter. I ate standing at the counter, the kind of meal that tastes better than any restaurant when you know exactly what it cost you to get here. As dusk slid down the glass, I turned off the overhead lights and let the room go to blue. The city stitched itself with lamps. The ocean darkened to velvet. I carried my tea to Richard's chair and sat. The cushion gave its small sigh, and I felt the history of my body settle into it. On the shelf, the white box seemed to rest easier. No longer a bribe, now a boundary. I slept lightly on clean sheets in a room that did not remember sorrow. The night did not wake me with radiator complaints or sirens. The building breathed evenly, a big animal at peace. Before dawn, something drew me up. The horizon held a gray seam. Then it opened. Light rose like a patient hand. The glass warmed under my fingertips as the first stripe of gold found the floor and moved toward me. I carried my tea to the chair and sat facing east. The water received mourning the way a face receives forgiveness. I spoke aloud because Richard had always liked the truth plain. I used to think this would be Lucas's home, but it turns out it is mine, and for the first time, I feel worthy. The words did not echo. They landed and stayed. I let them. The sun climbed. The room filled. The chair held me as if it had been waiting for this exact angle of light. I looked at my hands and saw they were not empty. They held keys, paper, and choices. They held a life I had been writing in the margins. Now the margins had become the page. A gull cried somewhere far below. A door opened and shut. I lifted my cup, tasted the day, and decided to begin. The call came just after sunrise when the ocean was the color of pewter and the city had not decided who it would be yet. I was in Richard's chair with my first cup of tea, watching a strip of gold crawl across the floor. The phone buzzed on the windowsill, Lucas's name filling the screen. I let it ring once, then twice. I answered because I wanted the choice to be mine. "Mom," Lucas said. His voice had the shape of someone bracing for a wave. "We know about the penthouse, about the check. Was that meant for us? Were you going to give that to me and Mia?" I looked at the white box on the closet shelf across the room. Even from here, the silver ribbon held a straight line. "Yes," I said. "It was meant for you. It was my wedding gift." I heard him exhale, a sound that wanted to be relief and could not be. "So it's true," he said. "We thought maybe it was one of those rumors. Someone recognized your signature at the title office. Someone else saw you with a bank manager. Mia said there was no way you would do something that big without telling us." I didn't know what to believe. "I did," I said. "I believed I could make a bridge out of paper." The line went quiet. Then he tried again. "Why didn't you give it to us? Why take it back? We didn't do anything to deserve that." Across the glass, the water shifted, slate to steel. I kept my voice level. "Your wife asked me to sit by the kitchen door for the photographs. She wanted the young faces in the frame. I stood up. I picked up the box. I left." He made a sound like a cut air pocket. "I didn't see. I swear I didn't see." "I know," I said. "That's part of the problem." He swallowed. "Mom, people say things at weddings they don't mean. It was hectic. She can be blunt. You know I would have stopped it if I had heard." I took a breath. "You were there. That's enough of the truth for me." Paper rustled on his end. "Mia and I talked all night. We were stupid. We were caught up. We can fix this. If the issue is the photos, we can retake them. We can make it right. We can show you how much you mean to us. Hey, showing me requires more than a camera." I said. He went quiet, then changed lanes. "How much did you win?" he asked, and sounded ashamed of the question as it crossed his lips. "I mean, not the exact number, just, if you're safe. People talk. Mom, the number in the rumor is large. Is that true?" "I'm safe," I said. "That's the only number that matters to me." He cleared his throat. "We made some decisions that weren't smart. The honeymoon was on a card. The car was a stretch. We thought a promotion was coming sooner. We thought we would refinance. It turns out the market isn't as friendly as it looks on television. If you had given us the gift, we could have reset. We still can, if you decide to." I let the sea answer for a few heartbeats. The waves did not hurry. "I'm done paying to reset other people's choices," I said. He flinched in the silence. I could hear it. "You're angry," he said. "I understand. We were wrong. I was wrong. I should have protected you. Please don't punish me for a moment I didn't see. This isn't punishment." I said, "It's proportion. It's me matching the size of my gift to the size of the respect I received." He sniffed, and his words blurred. "Mom, don't do this. We can apologize. Mia will apologize. She will say it to your face. She knows she crossed a line." "I know the difference between apology and access," I said. He tried a softer corner. "I miss you," he said, "the way things used to be. You and me against the world. Remember the library fair, the pie bake sale? You taught me to lace my shoes on the church steps. I remember you waiting in the cold for my bus when I stayed late at practice. You were always there. Be there now. I closed my eyes and saw his small hand on my wrist in a hospital night. Hot with fever. I remembered the weight of his head against my shoulder. Love is not a switch you throw. It is a house with many rooms. I chose the one with a lock. I am here, I says. I am in my home. I am not at the edge of a photograph. He inhaled sharply. If this is about money changing me, I'll prove it hasn't. I'll sign anything. I'll put the house in your name. I'll put conditions on the check. I'll agree to whatever the lawyer says. We just need a chance. Please. You had one, I said. It came wrapped in white with a silver ribbon. You told it to wait by the kitchen door. He began to cry. The sound was not pretty. It was real. I don't know how to fix this, he said. You do, Sam said. Begin with truth. Name what happened. Ask for forgiveness without asking for a favor. At the same time, live a season where you don't treat me like a solution. Come to see me without needing a bank. He was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller. Can I come today? Just me? No agenda. I want to look you in the eye. I want to say I'm sorry without Mia in the room. Not today, I said. I'm still learning how it feels to have space. Tomorrow, he said, and I could hear the old boy in him, the one who used to bargain for 10 more minutes of play. Maybe, he said, when you want a relationship with me that doesn't begin with a spreadsheet, you'll know how to knock. When you're ready, you know where I am. The line shook. Mom, he said, I love you. I love you, I said, that's why I'm doing this. Can you tell me one thing? He asked. If I had seen it and stopped her. If I had put my arm around you right there and brought you to the front, would the box have stayed on the table? Yes, I said, and the truth sat between us like a rain barrel filling. It would have, he cried again, quieter, and I let the sound pass through the room and out the open window. I looked at the water and felt the steadiness of something that had no interest in explaining itself to the shore. Goodbye for now, Lucas, I said. Please don't hang up. He said. When you're ready, I said. You know where to find me. I ended the call and set the phone on the sill. The ocean kept moving. I wrapped both hands around my cup and felt the heat soak into my palms. I did not pace. I did not second guess. The white box on the shelf stopped being a test. It became a boundary that belonged to me. Outside, the light brightened. Inside, the room stayed calm. I took a sheet of good paper and the blue pen Richard liked because it never smudged. I sat at the kitchen table with the ocean breathing against the glass and began a letter I did not intend to send. Dear Lucas, I'm writing while morning is still soft and the gulls argue on the rail. I want a few truths on a page where I can see them, and where you might see them someday. When you were 8 and burning with fever, I folded a cool cloth and pressed it to your forehead, then to the back of your neck, then back to your forehead again. You said, without opening your eyes, Mom, don't leave me. I promised I wouldn't. I kept that promise through hospital corridors and grocery lines and nights that wouldn't end. For years, I kept it. When rain drowned the sidewalks and buses ran late, we walked home together. You in rubber boots, me in old sneakers with soft soles. You named trucks. I named clouds. We counted between lightning and thunder. We made puddles into games because games let poor days pretend they are rich. I wrung your socks in the tub and dried them over the radiator. You fell asleep on my lap while I read a library book stamped discard and rescued anyway. After Richard died, truth bent but did not break. He sold his time to a job that took his breath. He gave us kindness each night he had any left. I sold his watch to pay your first semester deposit. I smiled at the pawnbroker because dignity costs less than shame. I worked holidays and took the shifts no one wanted. I learned to carry tiredness like a purse that matched every outfit. I made soup from almost nothing and chose produce by weight and price per ounce. I counted coins at counters where clerks looked past me toward people who moved faster. There's something I want you to know about the box with the silver ribbon. I wrapped it with steady hands. I imagined you lifting the lid. your mouth opening the way it did when you were small and discovered one more candle than you expected. I imagined Mia going quiet. I imagined gratitude landing in the room like a bird that trusted us. I believed paper could be a bridge. I believed money could quiet the old hunger for respect. I believed we could speak to one another as people who remembered where we came from. At your wedding, when Mia asked me to sit by the kitchen door so the photographs would look young and untroubled, I heard something break that had been cracking for years. I stood up, I took the box, and I walked away. I walked toward air I could breathe. That choice was not fury. It was a boundary. A boundary is not a wall. It is a door you lock until the other person learns where to knock. I'm not writing to punish you. I'm writing to draw a line around what has been real between us. I loved you through late notices, rusted mufflers, and a loneliness that borrowed my name. I loved you when you were careless with me. Because children practice on their mothers the way pianists practice scales. They believe the music will be there no matter how hard they strike the keys. Love is not immunity. It is attention with a spine. You asked on the phone if we could fix this. We can, but not with a retaken photograph or a quick apology meant to unlock a check. What breaks must be named. What is named must be carried. What is carried must change how we walk. If you want to try, arrive without an agenda and stay long enough to hear how silence sounds when it is chosen, not imposed. Sit with me at a table with no forms on it. Tell the truth. Do not manage optics. Practice care. I forgive more easily than I forget. Forgetting is how harm repeats in the same costume. I can sit with truth. I can also sit with you if you come as my son and not as a petitioner. I don't require perfect words. I require honest ones. Say, I didn't see you, and I should have. Say, I put the picture before the person. Say, I wanted what you have more than I wanted who you are. Then stop. Let the room breathe. Let the ocean finish a sentence or two. We can meet in that quiet without price. Here is the last true thing for today. If one day you knock without ambition in your hands, I will open. If not, remember there was once a white gift box waiting for you, and a mother who kept her love and kept her boundary. 2. Love. Mom, I folded the letter in even thirds the way Richard preferred. Creases pressed flat with my thumb. I stood on a chair and slipped the envelope into the white box between the deed and the velvet sleeve. The lid settled with a quiet fit. The ribbon needed no adjustment. It already knew its job. I placed the box back on the shelf where morning could find it, and where I could too when I needed to remember that mercy and limits can live in the same house. Then I sat down again with a fresh sheet of paper. This time I wrote, "My pain will not just pay for them. It will become a shelter for others." I felt the words settle into my bones with the certainty of a tide. I picked up the phone and called Rodriguez when the clock reached a decent hour. He listened without interrupting, then said what he always says when the heart outruns the hands. "Come in. We will make the feeling into paper." His conference room smelled faintly of toner and lemon oil. Rodriguez had already stacked folders along the edge of the table, tabs marching in a sensible rainbow. He slid a legal pad toward me. "Name it," he said. I wrote Harbor Light Fund because light and safety and a way in from rough water felt right in my mouth. He nodded. Mission. I said it slowly so we could hear its bones. Emergency support and legal advocacy for older women experiencing financial exploitation by family or caregivers. He crossed out caretakers and wrote caregivers. Less clinical, he said. We mapped programs with a blunt pencil. Microgrants for rent and utilities when an adult child drains a parent's account. A clinic day each month where pro bono lawyers help unwind predatory signatures. Workshops on durable power of attorney. Beneficiary designations. And how to say no without apology. A tiny helpline that forwards to trained volunteers during business hours. Partnerships with shelters and churches that trust the women who walk through their doors carrying grocery bags full of receipts and shame. Bored, Rodriguez said. 3 at minimum. I smiled. Diana, Elena, and Joe. He grinned like he already knew. Good choices. They will tell you the truth. We drafted bylaws with plain language. Term limits. Conflict of interest rules. A requirement that at least half of all grants go out within 90 days. So the fund never forgets its purpose. He ordered an EIN while I read the articles of incorporation aloud, saying the words to turn them real. Then the choreography of signatures began. Pages slid. Pens scratched. Rodriguez's notary stamped each document with a silver seal that caught the light. "Paper is power," he said, "but only when it moves." We opened the operating account at the credit union across the street. The branch manager shook my hand and printed a temporary checkbook. Back in the conference room, I wrote the first check to Harbor Light Fund Endowment in an amount that felt serious and still left me room to breathe. The numbers looked clean on the line. Rodriguez watched my face. "How does it feel?" "Like putting a roof on a house that has been waiting." We composed a one-page grant application that fit on a clipboard. Name, situation in your own words. Immediate need. A box to check if a family member is pressuring you. A promise that we would call within 48 hours. No essays, no hoops. Dignity moves faster when the form is short. Rodriguez called 2 friends who run clinics. They agreed to take our referrals on Wednesdays. I emailed the pastor who organized the meal train when Richard died. He offered a room in the church basement and a percolator that never quits. Diana texted to say she and Elena would price out a basic website, and Joe would design a flyer that did not look like a cry for help, but an invitation to steadiness. We gathered around the final packet. Rodriguez tapped the signature line with his pen. I signed my full name in the same hand I used to sign permission slips and rent checks. He countersigned as a registered agent. The notary pressed the seal with 2 firm hands. The sound was quiet and decisive. "There," Rodriguez said. "Now your intentions have a spine." I held the stamped articles and felt the weight of them. "My pain will not just pay for them," I said again, this time to the room and to myself. "It will become a shelter for others." Rodriguez's mouth softened. "That's the best use of winning I've heard in a long time. 10. On the way home, I stopped at a print shop and ordered a small plaque for my desk. Harbor Light Fund Paperwork Justice. Quiet help. The clerk asked if it was a law firm. "Not exactly," I said. "More like a warm roof." Back at the Penthouse, I placed a copy of the filed documents in a fresh folder and slid it into the closet beside the white box. Not to hide it. To keep mission next to memory. I texted the 3 women. We are official. Thursday vigils now include board meetings. Bring grilled cheese. Diana replied with a trumpet emoji she barely knows how to use. Elena sent a photo of peaches. Joe wrote, "Minutes will be short and merciful." I opened the balcony door and let wind spill across the table. The harbor flashed. Somewhere a tugboat sounded its horn. I rested my hand on the folder and felt the world tilt a fraction toward right. A life can turn quietly when you put your name on the line that matters. Diana arrived first with a tote bag of groceries and a bottle wrapped in brown paper. Elena and Joe followed with a casserole dish and a small tin that rattled like it held cookies. I had set the dining table with linen and the china I almost never touch, then paused and carried out Richard's old tea set. The porcelain was thin at the lip and traced with a fading blue pattern. On this glossy table under a high ceiling, the cups looked like survivors sitting in front row seats. I placed the teapot in the center as if it deserved the spotlight. "Board meeting," Diana said, grinning, "featuring dinner and strong opinions." "Minutes will be short and merciful," Joe answered, already slipping into a chair with the ease of someone who has earned many evenings of belonging. Elena lifted the lid from the casserole. Steam rose, smelling like home and butter. We ate first because thinking is kinder on a full stomach. Casserole, green salad, peaches sliced into a glass bowl, bread with a crust that sang when you cut it. After the plates were cleared, I set the tea set on a tray and poured. The glaze caught the light from the windows. Diana watched my hands. "Richard would like this," she said, simple and precise. "I almost left it in the cabinet forever," I said, "but I wanted something old to sit comfortably in the new." The cups chimed lightly against the saucers. For a moment, I heard our younger voices in the sound. We opened the folder for Harbor Light Fund. I passed around the stamped articles and the first check ledger. Elena had mocked up a simple one-page website on her tablet. The banner read Harbor Light Fund with a small lighthouse sketch Joe had drawn on a yellow sticky note and scanned. Diana tapped a section titled, "Call Us," and smiled. "Not a portal," She said, "A phone number that rings where a human answers." We read the draft flyer aloud. Quiet help for older women facing financial pressure from family, microgrants, legal clinics, a helpline staffed by people who listen. Jo marked a word with her pencil. "Replace pressure with coercion," she said. "Name what it is." We voted, 3 fingers raised, and then mine. A little parliament of women who have carried lives in bags. When the business was done, we let the room exhale. Elena reached for a cookie and told a story about her husband sneaking tea into the movie theater in a thermos because snacks were too expensive. Diana recalled the day she marched into a bank to close an account that charged her mother a fee every time she breathed. Jo confessed she once practiced saying no in the mirror so it would fit her mouth when she needed it. I looked at their faces and felt the weight inside my chest shift toward lightness. Years ago, I believed I would spend this part of my life shrinking into the corners of uneventful rooms. Now, 3 women were using my table as a launch site. The ocean beyond the glass kept its steady conversation with the shore. The city lit its lamps, and the penthouse gathered warmth like a hearth. I refilled the cups. The teapot poured with a slight wobble, the way it always had. "I used to think I would die in silence," I said. "But it turns out silence can be a beginning." Diana nodded, eyes wet the way they get when truth lands without fanfare. Elena reached across and squeezed my wrist. Jo raised her cup like a toast. We carried our tea to the balcony and stood behind the glass because the wind had teeth. Lights flickered along the harbor. A tugboat sounded a long, low note that vibrated in our ribs. "We'll need more chairs," Diana said, "for the women who show up." I pictured them arriving with envelopes full of notices and a look that says they are braced for disbelief. I pictured the relief that spreads when someone believes the first time. Back inside, we rinsed dishes and stacked them to dry. Richard's cups made small porcelain clicks as they settled. Elena wiped the table and left it emptier than she found it. A kindness in cloth. Jo taped the draft flyer to the refrigerator. "A good idea belongs where the milk lives," she said. We laughed, and the room seemed to take a deeper breath. At the door, Diana hugged me hard enough to steady my bones. "Your households," she said. Elena pressed the cookie tin into my hands for tomorrow. Jo promised to email minutes that read like a poem. After the elevator closed, I stood quiet with a tray in my hands, listening to the building breathe. I washed the cups and dried them and set them on the shelf at eye level. The blue pattern looked less faded under this light. In the closet, the white box waited with its ribbon true. I did not feel haunted by it. I felt accompanied by what it had taught me. I turned off the kitchen light and let the room glow with what remained. My life did not get louder tonight. It got deeper. The concierge called first. "Mrs. Evans, your son and his wife are in the lobby. They're asking to come up." I looked at the video phone. 2 figures stood by the desk beneath the high ceiling. Mia held a glossy bag. Lucas shifted from foot to foot. "Please tell them I'm not receiving visitors," I said. "If they leave something, keep it at the desk." I hung up and opened the balcony door. From 14 floors up, the harbor glinted. Gulls stitched the air below. They stepped to the curb and craned their necks toward my windows as if they could see through glass and decisions. The wind lifted my hair, and I said the sentence I had practiced in the quiet. "The door opens for respect, not for greed." They tried the intercom next. The buzzer sounded in my hallway, a small mechanical plea. I watched the light blink and go still. I did not answer. When the elevator arrived on my floor by habit, its doors opened on an empty hall. A little pantomime of welcome. I let them close. My phone chimed. A text from Lucas. "Mom, we're downstairs. Please." Then another. "We want to apologize in person. We love you. 5 minutes." I set the phone face down and rested my palm on the deadbolt. Through the wood, I felt my pulse steady. I thought of the kitchen door at the reception, the way the world wanted me to become architecture. Not today. The concierge rang again. "They're asking nicely," he said. "They say they only want to talk." "I know," I answered. "Offer them water. If they wait, let them wait." I walked to Richard's chair and sat facing the entry as if attendance could be an act of choice. Minutes lengthened. On the screen, I saw Lucas lean over the desk. Mia placed the bag like bait. The lobby doors opened and closed for couriers and neighbors. A resident must have taken pity. The camera showed Lucas and Mia slipping past on someone's invitation. My call box lit. The elevator rose. I stood and crossed to my door. On the inside mat, I straightened the corners with my foot. I heard their voices down the hall. Muted. Urgent. They stopped outside. Lucas knocked. 3 soft taps he used to practice at Halloween. "Mom," he said through the wood. "It's me." Mia's voice followed. Bright. "Mary, we only want 5 minutes. We brought something for you. We can leave it if you prefer." I touched the cool brass of the handle, but did not turn it. Between my fingers and the hall lived everything I had learned this year. I leaned my forehead to the frame and breathed once. Twice. I could make this easy. I had made everything easy for so long. The muscles remembered. I stepped back. "Please." Lucas said. The word landed heavy, then rolled under the door and lay at my feet. Looking up, I picked nothing up. "Not today," I said, voice calm as a closed book. "When you are ready to visit me without an agenda, you'll know how to knock." There was a pause in which I felt him recognize the sentence as a map. Mia tried again. "We have a plan to make this right. We can retake photos, do a family dinner, show everyone." I pressed the latch just enough to make the mechanism click, the softest sound a lock can make. "Stop managing optics," I said through the door. "Start telling the truth." Then I stepped away. We stood on either side of the line, inside, the air of my life, outside, their breath fogging the paint. Lucas's knuckles brushed the wood once, more touch than knock. "Okay," he said at last, and I heard the boy learning to stand up in the man. Their footsteps receded. The elevator chimed. Doors opened. A small wind ran down the hallway and lifted the edge of my runner. I set it straight, gently. I went back to the balcony. They reappeared on the sidewalk, smaller now, faces turned up and then away. The glossy bag swung from Mia's wrist. She set it on a bench and left it there like a thought she did not want to carry. The harbor kept glinting as if nothing had happened, and exactly what had happened had. Inside, I wrote one line in my notebook. Today, I kept the threshold. I slid the book beneath the white box on the closet shelf so the words could rest under the ribbon. Then I stood in the doorway to the balcony. 1 foot on stone, 1 on wood, and felt the frame hold. A home is 1,000 choices disguised as hinges and latches. I closed the glass gently, and the click sounded like a sentence done. Evening settled. The glass went from bright to blue. The water outside became a single sheet. I boiled water and set out the cup I save for nights when the ache under the ribs wants company. Tea is a small ritual. Heat and leaves and patience. It gives the hands something kind to do. I carried the mug to Richard's chair and faced the window. My reflection floated there. A woman in a good room who could still feel empty at the edges. Loneliness does not shout. It taps once, then waits. I felt it tap. It did not ask me to call anyone. It did not ask me to move. It only touched the back of my hand with one cool finger. I thought of the boy who asked for one more story. I thought of the man he became, practiced in ambition and clumsy with care. The white gift box on the shelf kept its silver line like a horizon. The intercom buzzed. Diana's face appeared with Elena and Joe at her side. She waved. Elena carried a grocery tote. Joe held a covered dish. I pressed the button. "Come up," I said bold. When they reached my door, the hall smelled like garlic and butter. Diana kissed my cheek as if the last 40 years were a single afternoon. "We brought reinforcements," she said. "You know, Elena, this is Joe, partners in mischief." Elena's eyes were kind. Joe stood like a retired teacher. We stepped into the kitchen, and the 3 of them moved like a practiced trio, opening drawers without asking, finding bowls as if they had lived here for years. Diana handed me a knife. "Slice these tomatoes," she said. "Thick, not shy. Elena melted butter with chopped onions. Joe rinsed lettuce and snapped it into a bowl. I smiled at the sound of their work. The click of gas, the thud of a spoon against the pot. Diana pressed bread in a pan until cheese surrendered. Elena stirred the soup until it went from thin to velvet. Joe sliced peaches and sprinkled them with sugar and lemon. Dessert, she said. We honor the fruit before it forgets its summer. We ate at the island under the pendant lights. Tomato soup in wide bowls. Grilled cheese crisp at the edges. A salad that tasted like gardens. Carry hope. Diana raised her water. To Mary, she said, who learned to say no and make it sound like music. Pee. I felt my face heat. To friends, I sassed, who show up with dinner and fix the shape of a room. They told stories. I let my spine uncoil. Elena's husband had been a mechanic who could fix anything except time. She wore his ring on a chain. Joe kept a classroom running on grace and a whistle. Diana confessed she once scandalized the church committee by letting the bake sale take cards. Mercy should not require exact change. We laughed. The sound polished the air. After plates were empty, Joe looked at me with the kind attention older women give when they measure the weather in your eyes. You have done a hard thing, she said. Hard does not mean wrong. Hard often means correct. Elena nodded. Kindness without offense invites goats, she said, and Diana almost spit her water. We washed dishes. I wiped while they rinsed. Hands working side by side can say what mouths fear. Elena dried the last bowl and leaned on the counter. You know this, she said, but it helps to hear it. Family can be the people who learned your laugh instead of the people who share your nose. I looked at the three of them, sleeves pushed up, hair loose, faces lit by usefulness. The ache stepped back. Stay for tea, I said. We carried cups to the living room and faced the windows. Night lay on the ocean like a quilt. Small lights winked along the shore. Diana tucked her feet under like a teenager. We should name this, she said. This hour of women in a high room telling the truth. Make it a habit. Joe nodded. Thursday vigils, she said. Elena grinned. With grilled cheese. I told them about the letter I wrote and hid in the white box. Diana asked to see it. I set it between us. She touched the ribbon like a violinist testing a string. This is not a weapon, she said. It's a bell. Ring it only when respect enters. They left around 10, promising to text when they reached their quiet houses. The door clicked. The apartment listened. I stood at the balcony with the glass open and the screen closed. Below, someone laughed. The night carried it up like a gift. I whispered, Family is the people who keep you whole. I felt the house hold me upright. I let it. Gratitude arrived quiet and solid. I made room for it. I was not waiting for a call. I was answered by presence. The windows became mirrors. My reflection did not look lonely anymore. It looked accompanied. I washed the mugs and set them to dry. I wrote one line in my notebook. Chosen family came to dinner. The room remembered. Then I went to Richard's chair and sat. The cushion sighed. I sighed back. The sea kept its counsel. My heart matched it beat for beat. I woke before sunrise with a sentence already formed as if the ocean had written it on my ribs during the night. My pain will not just pay for them. It will become a shelter for others. The sky goes copper at the edges and deepens toward wine. I carry my tea to the balcony and feel the wind lift a strand of hair. The harbor breathing like a calm animal below. The glass door slides easily. This home knows how to open and how to hold. I rest my forearms on the railing, and the heat of the cup warms the place where my pulse lives. Lights come on along the shore, one window at a time, as if the city is remembering its gentleness. Behind me, Richard's chair waits in its spot, facing east for mornings and west for evenings, a faithful hinge between what was and what is. On the closet shelf, the white box sits beside the new folder for Harbor Light Fund. Memory and mission, shoulder to shoulder. I think of the women we will meet, hands full of letters and late fees, eyes full of apology for things that were never their fault. Paperwork justice will meet them at a table, and a kettle will be on. My phone begins to ring from the kitchen. The sound carries like a pebble thrown across water. I do not move. A gull scribbles a lazy figure 8. A tugboat hums its low note. The light leans more gold than red. The ring stops, then starts again. I lift the cup and watch steam move like a blessing. The calls can circle the room if they need to. I am not a destination tonight. I speak a sentence out loud because saying it has taught me how to live inside it. Sometimes the greatest victory for a woman after a lifetime of being overlooked is not to shout. It is to say no. The words do not harden the air. They soften it, the way a good stitch draws a torn seam together. I feel the truth settle where fear used to sit. The phone rings a third time and falls to silence. I picture Lucas finding his own door, the right one, the one that opens without a transaction. I picture Mia learning the difference between optics and care. The horizon takes the sun and keeps the glow. I set the cup on the small table by the chaises and lay my palm lightly on its rim. The camera would stop here if there were a camera. A steady hand on an ordinary cup, proof that peace is not theatrical. Behind the glass, the apartment holds its shape with lamps low and counters clear. Richard's cups dry on the rack, blue pattern catching the last light. On the fridge, Joe's flyer waits for women. On the notepad, a list for tomorrow's calls. My life no longer leans outward for permission. It stands on its own feet and lets kindness choose its direction. I slide the balcony door until it meets the frame and leave it just shy of the latch. A door ajar is a boundary and an invitation. It trusts the weather and remembers the wind. I have room for both. The harbor darkens to ink. The first stars insist on being seen. I lift my tea again, sip, and let the warmth write a small, faithful line through me. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below and tell me where you're watching from. If this story touched your heart, consider subscribing to the channel and tapping the bell. Not only to hear more stories like this, but to be part of a community that believes in kindness, healing, and second chances.